coming to tutoring on Friday. You guys are taking a step in the direction of demonstrating you want to pass the exam, and I'm super confident in you guys. I wanted to start with a couple of announcements. You guys probably heard about this already, but we're leaving Schoology. Schoology, the platform isn't able to handle all the traffic it's getting from online schools all across the country, and they're not built to handle how much work they're getting, so they keep crashing, which you guys know well. So thank you for your patience all this week with all the crashing Schoology. Your teachers know. If you have any grades that you're like, look, I couldn't get into that assignment, just make sure you tell your teachers, because we're going to be flexible with grades and things like that. Just keep those communication channels open. So we're switching to Google Classroom starting on Tuesday. So we're gonna have one more day of Schoology on Monday, and then on Tuesday we're switching to Google Classroom. So that'll be a little bit of a learning curve. Just like it took a little while to get used to Schoology, it's gonna take a little while to get used to Google Classroom, but we're all in the same boat together, so we'll figure it out. The other thing is that IAs for quarter 3 are coming. They're the week after next week. I think that was announced to you guys, and maybe a message was sent home to families. So we're going to do a little IA review this week to get you ready for the IA, which is going to be next week, the week of the 10th to the 17th or 18th.
But didn't they say we weren't doing IAs if we were going to be home for too long? So now why are we doing them now? If all the teachers said we weren't gonna do them, and it's still gonna affect my grade. So, and we're in a different quarter, so I don't know why you're gonna change the already like closed grades and try to reopen them. It doesn't make sense.
Agree. I'm a little confused by the decision to do it. The framing I got was that we still want to make sure that quarter 3 closes out properly so that we get all of that information so we can assess mastery and how everyone's doing. And it keeps our...
Exact. I literally made honor roll. Like the first time this year I made honor roll. And like every other like 2 quarters I was really close. I had 79s in math. And I actually passed with an 84 in math. And now it's going to go down because of this IA. And I know I'm probably going to get a C, which is going to bring it down a lot. And
well, I mean, I think one way to take it is it's good motivation to do your best on this IA. And hopefully if you're on a roll already, if you have Bs going into the IA, then just really push yourself to get a B on the IA, and you'll stay on honor roll. I think for AP World History, it's actually totally fine because we're going to have a chance to practice, and that's the other big announcement I have, which is that coming out today, we heard a little preview of this last night, but coming out today, AP is going to announce what the exam format is, and it's 2 things. It's probably like 99% sure, unless something changed from last night to today, going to be a DBQ, but it's going to be a short DBQ. So it's going to be probably 5 document DBQ, not a 7 document DBQ. And it's going to be, there's no way that they can regulate whether you have open notes. So it's going to be an open note DBQ. It's not going to be open screen. So you won't be able to like switch browsers in your website and like hop on Wikipedia real quick. But anything you have in a notebook, any course reader that you have, so your quarter 3 course reader or your quarter 2 course reader actually would be perfect if you have either of those in hard copy. We're going to try to get some printed reference sheets with all the reference sheets just like a short version of a course reader out to you guys. But that's the big news, and that's what we're going to kind of focus on. I am reading your chat box, and I get your questions about Q3 IA. I think just, send your concerns to your advisor, to your teachers. Just let them know that you're concerned about it, and we'll hopefully talk together as a staff about it, and then just do your best. I think you guys are all going to be in great shape to do well in the IAs. Any other questions about that before we do a little practice? Okay. To get started, I want you to think about the DBQ, and I want each of you that's in the room right now to think about, when you think about the DBQ, first, what are all of the rubric points you get on the DBQ? Let's think of a 7-document DBQ. How do you get how do you get all 7 points on the DBQ? Can we list out all the points? So someone get us started and name one of the points. Yep, you need context. Good. What else?
Isn't like document analysis one of them, or like complexity?
Yes, document analysis, meaning point of view, purpose, audience, historical context. So that's document analysis is 1 point. Complexity is the last point. So we have context. Ariana, you're right. Thesis. What else? Document analysis, complexity, that's 4. There's 3 more. Which one?
Evidence.
Be more specific.
6 documents.
6 documents, good. So using 6 documents gives you 2 points, but all 6 documents have to be directly supporting topic sentences, directly supporting your thesis. If you just go through and summarize 6 documents and say, this is document 1, this talks about this. This is document 2, this talks about this. You don't get 6 document points. You get 3 document points, but you wouldn't get 6. What's the last one?
Outside evidence.
Good, outside evidence. Those are the 7 points. You have those memorized. You know what you need to do on the exam. Now my question for you is to think about, which one of those are you struggling with the most? Which one is the hardest for you to get? Which ones are the easiest for you to get? So I want each of you to think about that. You can either say it out loud or write it in the chat box. What's the ones that you're going to struggle with? And let's not count complexity. Complexity is really hard. Complexity you only get if you get the other 6. So let's talk about the other ones. Which ones are you most confident about? Which ones are you least confident about besides complexity? Go. Outside evidence, good.
Anything that has to do with documents, like when you have to explain it, and I feel like I just won't get the point because I just explain it, but I don't really connect it because the way I write is I summarize it, then I would say it, but then I need to make it into a few sentences, and I can't do that. So I normally drag everything out.
So it sounds to me like the key there is connecting the documents to a thesis statement or a topic sentence. So how do you connect the document to a topic sentence?
Yeah.
Good. Documents, outside evidence, context. Good, Jasmine. Okay. Outside evidence. Yes. Good. I agree with you guys. I think if you think of those 7 points, if you can get a context, and if you can get a thesis, and if you can get 6 documents, so that's 2 more, and you can get outside evidence, if you can get 5 out of 7, you're going to pass the exam. So our goal in this tutoring session is to think about how can we get those 5 out of 7 points, because the document analysis point is hard, like the context, purpose, audience, or point of view. That one's challenging. Some of you are in a position that you've been getting that on some of your practice, but those 5, I think everyone can get. you guys are crushing the thesis. I'm not worried that you're not going to get a thesis point. So I want to think today about how to get context and outside evidence as well, okay? And Osagi, to your question, how do I get the documents to support my thesis and support my topic sentences? That'll come if you have a strong thesis and you know what your argument is. So we'll talk about that as well.
Okay.
I think my problem is that I understand some time periods more than others. So if the question's asking me about a time period that I don't really know about, I'll just like go off for it and I'll talk about what I do know just to make up for it.
Good. So how do you think you fix that?
Studying, but I don't know how to study. I don't know how to study.
Exactly. You got to study the time periods that you don't know. We'll talk about that too. Okay. I'm going to share a screen with you. Share my screen. I'm going to switch over to, sorry. I was looking up All American. Here we go. Okay, can you guys all see this prompt? Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so this is a prompt that, this prompt actually was the prompt that you guys have already written about it, but it's the prompt that last year's AP World History class had on their exam. So it's very relevant to the unit we just covered in class this week. I want you to take 4 minutes and think about see if you can come up with context. What's the background? See if you can come up with a thesis. Brainstorm some potential outside evidence you could apply to this prompt. You don't really have to read the source, but the prompt itself: how did the Portuguese transform maritime trade in the Indian Ocean in the 16th century, so 1500s? You can use the source, the quote there, to help you with that a little bit. But take 4 minutes right now, and I want you to write down on your own. Don't put it in the chat box yet. But what is the background that you need, the context? What's the thesis? What potential thesis you could write, and what is some outside evidence you could come up with? So see if you could just do that right now in 4 minutes. Okay, I have another about 90 seconds. Okay, it's been about 4 minutes. I didn't ask you to do this, but I hope you guys did it. Did you identify what is the historical thinking skill for this prompt? Because this is key to get the thesis point. Type it in the chat box or just share out.
Causation. Is it causation?
Causation is kind of what causes changes of the Indian Ocean? I think there's a better one. Yeah, I think it's CCOT. What stayed the same? How did they change the Indian Ocean? How did Indian Ocean change trade? How did the Portuguese change trade in the Indian Ocean? Dimitri, I'm glad you reminded me that contextualization is no longer a historical thinking skill that the AP tests for. They just changed that last year. So you guys learned that as one of the historical thinking skills last year, and it's gone. So it's either going to be causation or CCOT. The other one is comparison. It could be comparison, but I would bet all of my money that it's going to be CCOT or causation. And if I was actually betting, I would bet it's going to be CCOT because that's the easiest way for them to put 2 periods together for a one essay exam where that's all you're being tested on. I would not be surprised if it's a CCOT because then it's asking you to look at 2 different time periods. So that's what I'd be preparing for. Good. So we have a CCOT. Let's start with the thesis. Why don't you guys share out? I don't have a chance to look at your writing, but what do you think the thesis to this question is? How did the Portuguese transform maritime trade in the Indian Ocean? So someone share out what they think a good thesis would be.
I said the Portuguese controlled maritime trade by taxing people who wanted to trade.
Good. What allowed them? Yeah. Sorry.
I also think violence, so like it could be tax.
Sorry, you cut out a little bit. I heard something about violence, but can you say that again?
Yeah, like violence and like weapons, I guess, like cannons.
So they also introduced violence and what? And weapons? What kind of weapons?
Cannons was like a key one.
Gunpowder weapons. And what was trade like before the Portuguese showed up?
Peaceful.
It was peaceful and did anyone?
There's no
And
like,
it was free.
yeah,
Free.
no violence.
Controlled it. Awesome. You guys know so much about this. I'm excited. Good. Yeah, Dimitri, you're on the right track too. Non-Portuguese ships. They're taxing non-Portuguese ships that traded in the region. They're trying to establish a monopoly. Okay. Now, to get the context and to get the outside evidence, you need to do what? What should your first step be before you try to write those out in your essay? Maybe my question isn't clear. Let's go with the context. We'll come back to the outside evidence. What's the background you need to tell before you can tell the story of the Portuguese taxing trade and introducing gunpowder weapons and changing a peaceful trade network into a more violent and monopolized trade network? What's the story that leads up to that? What happened to get Portugal there? You can share out or type in the chat box, whatever you want. But let's start sharing our ideas.
I don't know if I'm too far back or what, but didn't it have something to do with how the Ottomans took trade from the Byzantines or something? I don't know.
Absolutely. Someone step in there. Ottoman. Let's get more specific.
They like conquered Constantinople from the Byzantines, and it was originally a Christian trading route, but then when they conquered Constantinople, it became a Muslim trading route. So the Portuguese had to go somewhere else to find trade for cheaper.
So, yeah, so Europeans want to find direct trade routes with who?
With other Christians.
Europeans want access to what?
Luxury goods or like
Asian luxury goods, like what?
Porcelain.
What else?
I don't know.
Someone else. What are some examples of luxury goods that Europeans want from Asia? Yes, spices. One more big one.
Silk.
Good. Yeah, and then how do they get there? That would actually probably earn you a point. If you just said the Ottomans conquered Constantinople from the Byzantines, so Europeans wanted to find direct routes with Asia, direct routes to Asia to get Asian luxury goods like porcelain, spices, and silk. If you had that, just that, you'd probably get a context point with one sentence. But you're going to cover your bases. So you're going to explain a couple more things, make sure you get it. What else would you add? How do the Portuguese get there? What allows them to get to the Indian Ocean to establish these trade routes?
Like caravels and astrolabes and stuff.
So they use maritime technology. Yeah, right, Demetria. So what do they use? What maritime technology do they use that allows them to engage in transoceanic trade? We got to be more specific. I'm glad you wrote that because a lot of people would write, well, they had better ships, but we have to explain what allowed them. What made them better than the ships they had in the 1300s? What maritime tech are they using? Anyone can answer now. Oh, you guys have these memorized. Come on. Yes. Like Latin sails, astrolabe, astrolab. What else? A couple more. At least one more. Yeah, okay. Monsoon winds. Once they get there, how do they know what direction they're sailing in? And where do all those technologies come from? Where did the Europeans get them? You know this one too. Compass, the Astrolab, Latching Sales, all that came from where? Did the Europeans come up with it? No, they got it from somewhere. They borrowed it from somewhere. Right. Or the Middle East. That is a great context. You've given some backstory that tells how the Portuguese arrive in the Indian Ocean. Fall of Constantinople, the maritime tech that they used, that they borrowed from Asia to get over to the Indian Ocean. Once they get there, they control the Indian Ocean by taxing the trade and introducing violence. Awesome. Outside evidence. This is the hard part. How do we get the outside evidence? What is the step you should take when you read a prompt before you do any writing to get outside evidence points?
You can brainstorm.
Yes, good. So we got to brainstorm. What should you brainstorm about? Okay, I'm going to help you with that, Demetria. How do we decide what to brainstorm? What's the topic?
Is it like Portuguese?
Yeah, so the topic for this one is Portuguese and maritime empires, maritime trade. You guys, can you think of any key terms when you think about the Portuguese or you think about the Indian Ocean trade? What key terms come to your head? Just name them out or type them in the chat box. Let's see what key terms we can brainstorm. Anything about the Portuguese, about Indian Ocean trade? They have armed ships. Do you remember who sponsored the trade? Who was the Portuguese ruler who sponsored trade? Why is outside evidence after the thesis? Well, it's not necessarily. You could start thinking of outside evidence before that. Someone's trying to talk, but I can't hear. Sorry. If you were just saying something, say again. Yeah, good. Trade post empires, great outside evidence. Yeah, no, it's a good question about process, about sequence. Like when should you start talking? When should you brainstorm the outside evidence? I would do it at the beginning before you write your thesis, but if you can. But sometimes your thesis can help you think about what outside evidence you could include. Do you remember what the name of the tax system was that the Portuguese used from the lecture this week? Yeah, good. So trade post, empires, system. I talked about one of the trade posts that they set up where they build a fort in Malacca. The Prince Henry the Navigator. So all those key terms could be potential outside evidence. You could also bring in outside evidence about Indian Ocean trade before the Portuguese arrived for this prompt. So what are some things you remember about the Indian Ocean trade before the Portuguese arrived? Give me some key ideas. If I say Indian Ocean trade before 1500, what comes to mind? We already have that it was peaceful and free. What else? Mm-hmm. Muslim merchants, which implies what religion is spreading? Mm-hmm. Good, good. So here's another thing that we didn't add to our brainstorm. What religion are the Portuguese? Mm-hmm. Right, they're Christian, they're Catholic, and they're going to bring with them Christian missionaries. Sorry, what? Masagi, you have a question?
No.
Okay. All right. So the last thing I want to do, if you guys got all of this, if you could include Cartaz somewhere in your body paragraph, it would be outside evidence. You could say, well, they taxed the trade, and then you mentioned, well, this system was known as the Cartaz system. What do you want me to send, Demetria? Send what later? What we just typed up here? Yeah, this document, I can share with you. Sure. Yeah, no problem. Good idea. Let's move away from this prompt. If you guys could get all that, and I think a lot of you were in really great shape to get a lot of that. What do we need to do for any prompt? What's the key step to be able to look at any DBQ question and get the outside evidence? Yeah, you want to break it down. You want to know the historical thinking skill. And then what's the other key part of break it down that you need? Before you group the documents, grouping the documents will help you get your thesis. Yes. So you have to group the documents to do a thesis, to get the thesis point. But what you guys did here is you didn't have any documents. You had 0 documents, yet you knew the answer to that thesis. Yeah, sorry, to that prompt. You could come up with a thesis without even reading the documents. So that's something you also want to think about. Do I know the answer to this without reading the documents? And then as you read the documents, you can fill in and say, oh, yeah, these documents support my idea that the Portuguese changed the Indian Ocean trade by bringing armed trade. So if you can try to answer the thesis without looking at the documents, then group the documents. But grouping the documents will always give you a great thesis. You guys you've done really well with that all year. What's What's the key to breaking it down after historical thinking skill? You identify the historical thinking skill and you identify the what? Yes, topic. So the key for the next month is to make sure you memorize all the topics and something about all the topics that we're going to be tested on. So I want to do another exercise. Can you guys come up with all of the topics between what we studied the last 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, and what we're going to study? Remember, there's no more 20th centuries. 20th century, World War I, all that is not going to be tested on. So what are the topics? What are the topics we covered at the beginning? Good, so we have Columbian Exchange. Whoops. Let's start with the post-classical ones. Columbian Exchange is one. Yes, transatlantic slave system is one. Southernization is kind of our version of a topic, but that's more about post-classical what? What are the 3 topics we talked about for the post-classical period? Okay, thanks for coming, Demetria.
Globalization.
Post-classical, we talked, the first lecture you guys watched was about post-classical what? What other post-classical? We covered trade, post-classical trade networks. What else?
Empires.
Post-classical empires. What else? What empire especially did we talk about, or what idea did we especially talk about? Talked about the spread
Of religion.
Yes, which religion?
Islam.
Okay, then we talked about Columbian Exchange. What other period 4 lectures did you have? Atlantic slave trade.
Wasn't Islamic gunpowder states one?
Which are what? The Ottoman. Yeah, we're going to talk about global trade on Monday, actually. Sarah, good. The first global trade network. There's one more. Enlightenment's period 5. We're going to get there. Global trade, and in addition, in addition to the gunpowder states and land empires, what other empires did we learn about?
Maritime.
Yeah, good. And then we talked about Enlightenment. Or we will talk about Enlightenment and Revolution. What else? What's going to come?
Industrialization and imperialism.
Mm-hmm. And last but not least, global migration. Okay, so the key to getting outside evidence is memorizing all of these topics. Any prompt you're going to get, any DBQ prompt you're going to get is going to fit into one of these 12 topics. It's either going to be about, and it'll probably be a CCOT or something that blends a couple of them together. So what do you need to do in order to be able to quickly come up with outside evidence about any of those 12 topics? A question I ask you again and again. What do you need to do so that you can study? You need to study. You need to do the flashcards that we talked about 2 weeks ago. You need to study your course reader. You need to study your notes. You guys know a lot about all of these things. You know a ton about it. You just need to be able to reference it quickly in the moment when you see a DBQ prompt. So let's try really quick. Call out, like unmute your mic and just name a trend, something about period 3 post-classical trade. Name any key term that comes to your mind. Let's see how many we can brainstorm. I'm going to set a clock for 2 minutes.
Religious tolerance.
All right, that might be something we can use in some other ones.
The demand for luxury goods.
European exploration or expansion.
Is that for post-classical trade?
No.
I would put that down here, yeah, European demand for or European exploration. You always want to name the trade routes. Can you name the main post-classical trade routes?
The
Silk
Silk
Road.
Road.
And?
Indian Ocean and the
Trans-Saharan.
Good. So any of those would be key terms. Any of those would be key terms. The luxury goods that are traded, the tolerance, what religion spreads.
Islam.
What post-classical emperors are we talking about? The main ones.
Ottoman.
No, post-classical.
Mongols.
What else?
The Qing Dynasty.
What?
The Qing Dynasty.
Qing is early modern, so it's the Ming, Song, Tang. The other major post-classical empire that we had a whole lecture about.
Umayyad and Abbasid.
Good. Islamic caliphates. So that kind of connects to spread of Islam. What's a key idea that comes up with that jumps into your head when you think of the Columbian Exchange? Any key terms, big ideas?
Americas.
Old world in the new world.
What else?
Spread of diseases.
Nice. Diseases. What else?
Cash crops.
Yeah, I think of diseases. I think of cash crops, and cash crops being sugar, cotton, tobacco. But what else? That's not a cash crop.
Diseases.
Tomato.
Yeah, right. Tomatoes, potatoes, especially potatoes
Maize.
and
Wait, technically maize, but livestock, I think.
Good. What comes to your mind when you think of the Atlantic trade system?
Slaves.
Chattel slavery. What else?
I don't know. I know there's more.
There can be overlap.
Yeah.
Chattel slaves used to do what?
Coerced labor.
They
What are the enslaved humans doing?
They're working on plantations to make cash crops.
Good. Plantation, agriculture, growing cash crops. Okay. This is what you want to be able to do. I would make this list, and I would make flashcards, like post-classical trade, and make, put as many key terms on the back as you can. Post-classical empires, make a flashcard for each empire. In some way, you want to look at these 12 topics, memorize them, and then start memorizing key terms that go with them. And the places where you want to get those key terms is from the course reader, from the lectures. You can go back and look at any of those lectures that we're giving you. Those are like nice distilled, that's a great review, is to look back at the lectures, to look back at your notes from the lectures, anything like that. If we were to look at one more prompt really quickly, in 2 minutes, and then I'll let you guys go. How did Christianity change societies in Latin America? What's the topic? Which of these 12 is the topic? How did Christianity change Latin America?
European exploration.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
European exploration.
Still couldn't hear.
European exploration.
Can you type it? It is about European exploration. That's not exactly one of our, which of our topics is that? European exploration fits into which topic of those 12? Anyone can jump in. European exploration is a subset of which of those topics? It's connected to climate exchange. I would say it's a subset of this maritime empire topic. So it's about European exploration. It's about a maritime empire. What empire do you think this is mostly going to be about? Christianity changing Latin America. Right, the Spanish. And then if you think about the Spanish, what are some key terms that come to your mind? What jumps out at you if you think about the Spanish? Yeah, globalized trade. Spanish Empire, what else comes to your mind? You can unmute yourself and share out, or type it into the chat box. This is our last quick brainstorm. Spanish Empire is about what and what and what?
Didn't they have like harsh punishments for anyone who wasn't Christian?
Yeah, good. So they punish heretics.
Yeah.
They're not about religious tolerance, right? They're about forced conversion. So they're forcing.
Wasn't that like rule through fear or something?
Yeah.
It was like the opposite of religious tolerance.
Yeah. Yeah. So the opposite of religious tolerance, they're forcing people to convert. Are they successful?
Yes.
No,
Yes.
not really.
Well, they are successful, but what? Latin America is full of Christians today. It is mostly Christian. So they're successful in forcing people to convert, but what?
There's like a lot of syncretism.
Nice. I love that word, syncretism. There's a lot of syncretism. They hold on to their old religion. You guys have been awesome. You guys are so smart. Thank you for coming to this tutoring session. I know some of you might have another tutoring session to come up at 10:30. I have another one at 10:30, so I'm gonna wrap this one up. Study the topics. Study the topics. Yeah, I'll share this with all of you guys. Study these topics. Study key terms. That is the key. If you see any DBQ prompt and you can say, oh, I know that this is about imperialism, or, oh, I know this is about industrialization, then you can brainstorm the outside evidence. You can also brainstorm the context. And I'm confident you guys are going to get the thesis and the document use points. So then it's just about getting those other ones, and then you're going to pass. So keep up the studying. Good work. Thanks for coming to tutoring. I miss seeing you all a lot. I miss school, but great to see you. Bye-bye.